Right, I think we're in. So hello everyone, the crossover RLS 331. This is the first video of the podcast guest talk with Maegan Ciesielski. Closer, Ciesielski. Closer, okay. I'll work on that further. Sorry, Maegan. So Maegan, I know Maegan from actually my time as a PhD student in the faculty. She was doing a master's degree in APA, correct? Right? Adaptive physical activity. And she recently also completed her degree, which is great news. And she worked actually as a recreation therapist for the Pathway to Housing program at the Boyle McCauley Health Centre. She has actually 3 titles, so I'm going to go through that. Second title she has is a head coach for para track and field team at for the Stedward Center here in our Faculty of Kinesiology, Sports and Recreation. And finally, she recently started to work as Noquest College and their curriculum developer for the TR program in there too. So maybe some of you are thinking about taking some courses from, TR courses. Maybe you may take some of her courses in the future as well. So that's exciting anyway. Well, Maegan, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited, and I think we're very excited to learn from you. But my first question, though, was a bit about yourself. So I wanted you to just introduce yourself. I know you, but the class doesn't know. So we wanted to know about maybe who you are, where you're from maybe, and what's your education background beyond what I just talked about, and maybe your favorite leisure?
Sure. So I grew up in Edmonton and have stayed here, so I'm not very exciting. It's haven't moved far from home or anything, but I did my undergrad at the U of A in the BARS program, which I understand a lot of students are in. So that was a really good program to learn about rec therapy for me. And then I also just, as Shin said, completed my Master's of Arts also at the U of A. And I'm very excited to finally be done. It was kind of a long process. When I was at the U of A, I was a varsity athlete on the track and field team, which is kind of how I ended up now in a coaching role. And coaching paratrack is you kind of get all the aspects of track and then the aspects of adapted physical activity, which is really closely linked to rec therapy. So that's been a really interesting experience for me. So for leisure, I have like so many hobbies. I think this is why I became a rec therapist, because I just like doing leisure a lot. So obviously I really like running and other sports. I also play piano and do like all sorts of like old lady crafts, so like sewing and cross stitch and things like that. So yeah, you can pretty much any leisure activity I will try at least once.
That's pretty cool. I think that kind of, we're talking about the importance of repertoire, how wide your, skill sets and, the interest in activity can be, very important asset for successful recreation and leisure professional. So I guess you got that too. And I definitely respect people just born native in Edmonton and surviving all the winters. So there's that. You definitely have my respect for that. So just the first thing first, you have very interesting career here. So we wanted to know about, some of your current positions, but also some of the past positions that kind of got you where you are, and anything related to leisure recreation, really. And then finally, maybe how does your day-to-day work look like in terms of maybe the main one that you really have?
Sure. So I first started working in the field actually as a rec therapy assistant, which I started volunteering at a long-term care center, and then about halfway through my degree, I got offered a position as an assistant. So that was a really good start, and I realized I really liked the field, which was good, especially when you're halfway through a degree in it. So that's where I kind of started. My first position as a rec therapist, I worked at the Glenrose Rehab Hospital, and I worked in outpatient on stroke. So that was a really neat position because we did a lot of stuff in getting people back into the community, which is something that I really like a lot more than like inpatient stuff. And then I've also worked as a rec therapist in long-term care. So the first place that I very started volunteering and then worked as a therapy assistant, I also was the rec therapist to cover a mat leave there. So it's kind of a full circle in that setting. I really like long-term care because I really enjoy seniors. I like working with people with dementia. I often say you only need like one joke when you work with people with dementia because see it every day. It's kind of awful, but I just really like being able to connect with seniors, and you get to do a lot of stuff when you're essentially working in their home in long-term care. So that's really neat. And then I worked in acute care for a while at the Royal Alec, and when I was there, I kind of got introduced to what it means to work in the inner city. And so when I saw the posting for my current position, I was really excited because what I was seeing a lot in the hospital was people coming in from this inner city population and then either being really sick at the point they came in or just discharging them back to like homelessness or the streets and not really being able to make change in that. So in my current position, I am a rec therapist, but we kind of do a little bit of everything. So our clientele is people who have a severe mental illness and then have been experiencing homelessness on and off for a length of time. And our goal is to get them housed. So we have a housing team who finds them apartments, we get their finances and stuff sorted out. And then our clinical team just tries to keep them housed, which is often quite a challenge for many reasons. And so my kind of job specifically in that is regarding community integration and then meaningful occupations. So the idea behind that is if we can get people like going to their rec center and library and taking the bus and feeling a part of this like community that they're now living in, they're less likely to end up back on the street.
Right.
And if you give them something meaningful to do during the day, whether that's leisure or school or volunteering or work, that's going to also keep them more likely to be housed because they have kind of a purpose, and it's less likely that they're going to be hanging out with people that we don't necessarily want them to, or doing other pursuits that are less helpful to their health. So I don't really have a typical day because our days are just wild sometimes, but generally we have a big team meeting every morning and we go over our clients, and then I go see people in their homes. If they're not housed, we go do outreach and try to find them at like shelters and community centers and things. And yeah, some of the kind of more rec therapy things I do might be going to the rec center with someone. So I seem to go to Aquafit a lot in all of my jobs. So doing that, going to the gym. For some people, it's just going out walking and trying to kind of explore their community, doing crafts, helping people apply for school and work is also part of my job, which in a sense, often, especially our people work like more like temporary positions and kind of things, which it's less of a career and more of like something to fill their day. So it kind of relates to leisure in that way. And yeah, and then on less good days, I do a lot of driving around and getting groceries for people. So it's yeah, it really varies.
Sounds good. I mean, it's really, it's a challenging job, isn't it? I mean, what's your caseload? If you know, how does it look like now?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the team that I work on is we do something called team case management, which means that every single client, we have about 80 clients and about 10 clinical staff. Every client is on my caseload and every client is on all the other clinical team members' caseloads. But there are people that I see more regularly. So sometimes that's based on, they just kind of fit with your personality, you get along with that person. And sometimes it's based more on like they have a specific recreation or leisure goal. And then we do see people outside of that. So there's a few people on the team that or on the client list I've never met, but that's just kind of few and far between. So it's a little different than when I worked in the hospital and I covered about 80 beds, but I was the only rec therapist. So
right. Well, so I just wanted to like, so what's the what do you think the benefit of that kind of case load approach? I mean, as opposed to some individual having, let's say, okay, we're going to divide 80 people across 10 people, so that's going to be 8 people or 8 clients per, per person.
Yeah, I really like team case management because it's just like so much more holistic that if somebody needs to see the OT for some life skills work, then we just slide them in. They already know them. Oh, there is tax season. Okay, our finance social worker is going to see them. So it just like, we all do a little bit. We have a bigger scope than we do than if you worked at like the hospital, but it's also a lot easier just to meet all those broad needs without having to worry about like, oh, this person doesn't see that person kind of thing. So
right. So your team it sounds like your team is very interdisciplinary as well.
Yeah, so there's obviously myself, the rec therapist. We have an occupational therapist. I think we have about 3 social workers right now, and then some nurses on the team, some counselors, and then our family doctor and our psychiatrist are also a really big part of our team as well.
Okay, so that's a very interdisciplinary, diverse team as well.
Yeah, which is really nice. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I was just interested in like when was the first job that you really got? It goes back how many years now?
That's a good question. I think I started working as a therapy assistant, I want to say maybe 2013, 2014, maybe somewhere around there. Yeah.
So 6-7 years already.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow, that's something, right? I mean, your story as you started to work as, while you're in degree is really, I think, something to really think for my students as well, probably, because I mean, we're in a very interesting time right now, but if it's not, I mean, there is that potential opportunity, and I want my students to just look out for those opportunities and potentially do that too. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next question is specifically about the kind of like a main topic that we are trying to learn, discuss, read, and all that kind of stuff, and then, which is leisure education. And I'll give you some of the, actually one definition, and I'll put that into the chat box so that you can also see it. But also I'm gonna try to read that off to you, and you can totally disagree with me, like with this. Actually, no, it's not even from me. So you can say, oh, that's not what it is, or you can tell me like how that could potentially relate to you or any other professional in your field, how could help you potentially in your work, and ultimately your clients as well. So here goes, leisure education. It is a psychoeducation, so it's not just about doing activities. So we talk about importance of leisures and knowledge sharing and all that. And also behavioral modification aimed at increasing awareness of leisure opportunities and leisure constraints, as well as developing knowledge, skills, attitudes, and other resources conducive to quality leisure experience and improved well-being. It is not only about providing leisure activities and services, but also it educates why leisure is important and how quality leisure experience can be achieved in a systematic manner based on sometimes theories and evidence as well. So that's how we define. And how do you think it relates to your profession, your job?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of the biggest thing that came to mind when I was reading the definition initially was that, the topic of my thesis, I kind of looked at in rec therapy, sometimes we use recreation as like a tool to like achieve a goal. So we want somebody to do knitting, to work on their fine motor skills. But the other side, I'll be honest, I'm much more biased toward, is that we do leisure because leisure is good in itself. And what I like about that definition is that it really puts that to the forefront, that we don't necessarily need to be doing leisure recreation to attain something else, but that there's all these benefits of just engaging in leisure, and why that can be, I guess, enough, that it doesn't need to be, therapy for something else. So I think, I think that's something in rec therapy. Sometimes we're a bit like self-conscious because we like do rec and leisure, and maybe people don't take that as seriously as like some of the other like physio or occupational therapy. But I think when we look at all those benefits to leisure and we have that education about why it's so important, it can be really helpful if you're feeling a little bit disrespected.
Right. Yes, it almost sometimes feels like, well, we have to justify the therapy so that there's got to be goal, there's got to be documentation, there's got to be API, there's got to be everything. And the recreation becomes recreation and leisure itself becomes some of the back burner or just a side seat a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah. And I like part of what I like about my job and working in the community is that it's not so tied to like the API process. And I don't do any formal assessments in general. It just doesn't work in my current role. And so to me, just like helping people learn about leisure and their opportunities and things like that is such a win. So yeah. And then that's what I think what's often like in my current clients, they don't have a lot of knowledge of resources and leisure and opportunities and things. So if you can bringing in that aspect of like, these are things you can do in your spare time, like maybe instead of doing so many drugs, or in addition to it, we're harm reduction. So, but here's things that like they might not have experienced or they might not know the benefits of. So it can be, definitely really life-changing.
It was just interesting. I mean, do you feel like sometimes you can, I was wondering if you can share us with some success, I mean, not without the private, personal information, but, some of the success cases in a way where you felt like, oh, maybe I kind of taught them like importance of leisure, or maybe they got something, maybe they hit those, maybe aha moment, or I don't know if it's, you can share something like that, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky in my current role because nothing is ever just like goes up. So there's always ups and downs. But to me, I think there's a couple things that have kind of stood out is one of my clients was actually moved here from Fort McMurray, and then he ended up homeless, and then we got him housed and I did a lot of bus training with him, and then we took the bus to one of the rec centers, and currently COVID kind of shut this down, but prior to COVID, he was going there regularly. He would do his workouts. So he got those physical benefits. And then he also noted that he doesn't really know anyone in Edmonton. So he wasn't necessarily going to go talk to people at the gym because he's quite shy, but just being around people and being on the bus around people really boosted his mood as well, that he wasn't just sitting in his apartment all alone. So that's definitely one of our successes, I think. And then for quite a few of our clients, I do a lot of like kind of small crafts and things that they are able to do on their own with limited supplies. And especially seems to mostly be women, but there's some men too. They really notice like, oh, this is like when I'm like trying not to smoke, like I can go color. And am I probably going to smoke after that? Yeah, sure. But that was like 20 minutes that I spent not smoking, which is actually like a huge accomplishment. So yeah, kind of little things like that.
Cool. I mean, it's nice to see the really, the things that you're talking about, the small wins, right? Small changes, and you're not going to probably change the person's life overnight drastically. You're not going to probably, but still those small changes over time, right? Accumulation of it could be a very healthy and also very meaningful change as well. Nice. I was going to say something though. I forgot that, and I'm pretty sure that come back to me. Megan, would you mind if I actually stop recording, because apparently university tells me that I shouldn't be making video too long. So I'm going to stop recording and come back to the second video.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right.